Adam reached the age of 930 years, during which he had 30 sons and as many daughters. When he turned 930, a serious illness struck him, prompting him to call together his vast progeny and their descendants. "Gather around, I want to see you before my last breath," he urged. Thus, they gathered in front of his house, all except Cain, who wandered alone through the world. Among those who answered the call was Seth, the firstborn and favorite of Adam and Eve. Worried, Seth approached his father asking, "Father, what is the cause of your illness?" Adam, weighed down by pain, admitted, "I am afflicted by a severe disease and suffering." Confused, having never faced death, except for the tragic end of Abel at the hands of Cain, asked for explanations. Seth, trying to ease his father's pain, suggested, "Father, do you perhaps wish to return to the garden and its fruits? If so, command me to go. I will cover myself with ashes, weep, and beg heaven. Perhaps God will send an angel who will allow me to bring you some fruits from that garden to relieve your pain." Eve, moved and stricken by grief, also spoke, "O my dear Adam, let me take on half of your sufferings, for I believe I am the cause of your condition." Adam, touched by the words of Eve and Seth, gave them a task. "Do as you have proposed. Go to the garden, pray there as you have said, and beseech the angel to grant me some of the oil of mercy that flows from the tree of life. Bring me that oil so I can anoint my body and find relief from my pain." Even Seth, determined to reach the garden, ventured through a dense forest. During their journey, they were startled by a sudden attack. A wild creature pounced on Seth, wounding him. In the midst of terror, Eve confronted the creature. "Why do you dare to assault one who was created in the image of God? How can you turn against him with such boldness? Do you not remember that God has placed us above you?" Surprisingly, the beast responded with a human voice, defiantly. "Why should I care for your tears or your lamentations? Were you not the first to disobey by eating the forbidden fruit? Do not blame me, or else I shall be forced to remind you of your fault." At these words, Seth intervened firmly. "Be silent. Do not dare to challenge the image of God." With a humble reply, the beast consented. "I will heed your words, O Seth." Afterward, it withdrew into the forest, leaving Seth wounded but resolved to continue the journey. Even Seth, upon reaching the garden, prostrated themselves before the gate, invoking God with tears and prayers to grant them the oil of mercy to heal Adam. In response to their pleas, God sent the archangel Michael, the bearer of solemn news. "Seth, devoted man, do not exhaust yourself in your request for the oil of mercy, for I cannot grant it to you at this time. However, the time will come when a Messiah will anoint your father with that oil, and he will rise again, returning to the garden along with all his descendants. The corrupted heart will be removed from them, and they will receive a new heart, capable of discerning good. God himself will dwell among them, and they will become his people. Now, however, return to your father, for his earthly life is about to end within 3 days. Convey these words to him and observe what will happen at the moment of his departure." With heavy hearts, Eve and Seth returned to Adam and relayed the message from the archangel. Listening, Adam let out a painful groan. "Alas, Eve, what fate have you brought upon us with your act, thus initiating the reign of death?" With a voice broken by sadness, he then asked to gather all their children and grandchildren to tell them the entire story of their original sin, from beginning to end. When all the descendants were gathered around them, Eve began to speak, narrating the story of how the serpent was seduced by Satan. The latter, envious of the respect Adam and Eve received, convinced the serpent to lend him its voice. Taking advantage of a moment when the angels ascended to heaven for their act of worship, the serpent scaled the garden wall and approached Eve near the tree of knowledge. With great detail, Eve recounted to the listeners the events that led to their fall and subsequent expulsion from the garden. After finishing her story, the children took their leave, leaving Eve immersed in her thoughts. Then with a heavy heart, Eve exhorted them, "Go now, pray for him as long as my soul remains in my body. We do not know what reception awaits us, whether he will still be angry or forgive us with mercy." After these words, Eve went out, prostrated herself on the ground, and dedicated herself to lengthy prayers. After what seemed an interminable time, the angel of humanity appeared and spoke gently to her. "Arise, Eve, for Adam's time has come to an end. He is about to leave this life and meet his Creator." Hearing these words, Eve slowly stood up, and with her eyes turned towards the sky, awaited the passing of her life companion. As Eve watched the sky, a chariot of light drawn by 4 glittering eagles, with angels escorting on either side, appeared solemnly. The chariot stopped right above the place where Adam lay. The angels, carrying incense burners, surrounded the patriarch, and, lighting the incense, the smoke rose high, obscuring the sky. They prostrated in worship, invoking mercy for Adam, recognizing him as a divine image and the work of God's hands. Meanwhile, Eve noticed 2 imposing and unsettling figures in the skies. Frightened, she called Seth to her side. "Rise, O Seth, come and behold what no human eye has ever seen." When Seth approached, Eve pointed to the sky where the 7 heavens seemed to open, and Adam lay with angels praying over him. "Who are those 2 dark figures praying for your father?" she asked. Seth replied with reverence, "They are the sun and the moon, who intercede with the Most High for our father Adam." Puzzled, Eve asked, "Why are they devoid of their light and appear so dark?" Seth explained, "Their light cannot shine in the presence of the light of all things. Thus they are obscured and devoid of their usual splendor." As Seth and Eve conversed, the air filled with the solemn sound of angelic trumpets. The angels, prostrating themselves, lifted up a hymn of praise. "Blessed be the glory of the Lord over all his works, for the compassion shown toward Adam, his creation." At that moment, a seraphim with 6 wings appeared, gently taking Adam's soul and leading it to a lake of crystal-clear water located north of Eden. Here, in the divine presence, the soul was purified. The Most High then ordered that the soul be entrusted to the archangel Michael, who would keep it in paradise until the day of the universal judgment. Subsequently, the holy archangel interceded with God concerning Adam's body, prompting God to summon all the angels, each according to their rank. The angels gathered, armed with incense burners, trumpets, and vases of sacred perfumes. The Lord of hosts, preceded by the great winds, ascended high into the heavens. The cherubim, riding the winds, and other celestial angels surrounded Adam's body, escorting it towards the garden. As they proceeded, every tree in the garden bowed in reverence, swaying in the wind and releasing its fragrance. The magnificence of this celestial vision and the intoxicating aroma of paradise were such that all of Adam's descendants and all beings on earth were overwhelmed by a deep sleep. However, only Seth remained awake, the sole witness to this divine event, safeguarding the memory of such a sacred and transcendent moment. In paradise, as Adam's body lay outstretched, God spoke with a voice that echoed through eternity, "O Adam, why did you disobey my command? Had you followed my instructions, your enemies could not have triumphed over you. Now, however, I will turn their joy into sorrow and your sorrow into joy." Immediately the angels brought shrouds of silk and the finest linen, and God tasked the archangels Michael, Gabriel, Uriel, and Raphael to carefully wrap Adam's body in these precious fabrics and anoint it with sweet and fragrant perfumes. The Lord then ordered, "Bring here also the body of Abel. Since Cain killed him, his body has not found rest, as Cain tried to hide it. But the earth would not accept it, for it awaited the dust from which Adam was shaped to be returned to it. Consequently, Abel's body was recovered and treated with the same respect and honor accorded to Adam. Both were wrapped in funeral garments and, ultimately, buried together in the sacred soil from which God had originally taken the dust to form Adam. In this significant place, the bodies of the first men were returned to the earth, completing a circle of life, transgression, and redemption under the watchful and merciful gaze of the Creator. The angels, under God's command, dug Adam's grave and then carefully covered it over. Once this act was completed, God invoked Adam's body, calling him by name. "Adam, Adam," he said, and the body responded, "Here I am, Lord." God then spoke solemnly, "I told you, dust you are and to dust you shall return. Now I promise you that in the last days I will raise you from the dust, along with all your descendants." God then sealed the tomb, establishing that no man should disturb the site until 6 days had passed, the time necessary for the rib, once taken from Adam, to be returned to him. After these events, Eve awoke from the deep sleep into which she had fallen, troubled and unaware of what had happened to her husband's body. Turning to God in prayer, she said, "Lord, as I was formed from Adam's flesh, and have been with him in the garden, and have never been separated from him since our expulsion, I now beg you to allow me to be buried by his side, and that no man separate us." On the 7th day after Adam's death, while Eve was still immersed in these prayers, she concluded her invocation, looked toward the sky, beat her chest, and exclaimed, "Lord God of all things, receive my spirit." With these words, Eve passed away, surrendering her soul to God. Without delay, the angels descended, collected her body, and placed it in the tomb next to that of Adam and Abel, thus reuniting the first human beings in eternal rest together under divine guardianship.